Morning. Welcome to Thoughts and Updates this week. It's been a fascinating week politically and elsewhere because of the traction that Black Lives Matter has suddenly started to attract politically. Not only that, there seems to be a counter movement, a counter protest movement, a fascist movement, a neo-fascist movement, and a racist kickback to the ideas and the ideals. It certainly has been good to see these debates starting to evolve. Although the violence of yesterday down in London, the irony, of course, of people who believe or say they believe in the role of law and order, taking on the police, punching them, challenging them, rioting to all extents and purposes, is not lost, I think, in trying to protect somebody that they believe was an icon in protecting against fascism by showering with Nazi salutes is again another irony that is not lost on anybody. It should not be lost on anybody because it's just disgraceful, and it is disgraceful. The Black Lives Movement and the counter-protesters yesterday were out in some kind of force, and on Friday, particularly the anti-racist supporters were out in force, breaking lockdown regulations. Now, I'm here again from the back of the house, and will continue to be here for a wee bit yet, not because I'm frightened or frit. I do go out every day in order to have some kind of exercise, but I do believe that it's important to continue to demonstrate that whilst we are beginning to see this pandemic lessen, if we want to get to the situation that was enjoyed over the weekend in New Zealand, where mass gatherings were more than just allowed but encouraged to get the country back into some kind of normality because they have got rid of this pandemic, that we need to still take a little bit of suffering on the chin. Now, it's been 12 weeks. I know that because every day I send out activity sheets to all of our houses at work, and I think we're in day 82, 83 today, and that's been my every morning for those 80 plus days. So it has been a tough time of it, but people were dying, and yesterday I believe it was down to 5 in Scotland, and I'm quite happy to allow the Scottish Government to tell me that I should continue to be careful in doing what we're doing, rather than what the English Government has done and seen a spike in the number of cases of people who have caught the virus in certain parts of England because they've come out of lockdown too quickly. So the major worry, of course, is that what will happen is that the number of cases in Scotland are going to spike because of the activity over the last couple of days. Hopefully not. And I wouldn't take that, if it doesn't, as evidence that it's time to move on to phase 2 or phase 3 or just get out and about. For me, normality comes when we do what New Zealand did and have got rid of it completely. So, writing this week, I've had a bit of fun over the last couple of days, writing bits and pieces. Scottish Football Supporters Association, the Big Levein, has been the focus of my bit of fun this week. Craig Levein came out this week to tell us about how, he would not have got Hearts relegated. He was an absolute and utter genius. It was almost like going back to that game against the Czechs where he played a formation of 6-6 or 5-6-0 or 4-4-0 or whatever it was, utter nonsense. So, it was a bit of fun. I also sent an opinion piece into the Scottish Football Supporters Association, which went up. That was great. Thank you very much, Paddy Haney, who's responsible for getting up, which is about league reconstruction. I'm really struggling a little with league reconstruction because it used to be, we used to argue over 3-4-3s or 4-2-4s or diamond shapes, or what was the best structure for our team. Now we're arguing over whether it should be a 14-10-10 or an 10-10-10-18 or an 18-10 or whatever. It needs to be settled, and we need to move on now. Clubs need season tickets sold. You don't get a season ticket until you know which league you're in. You don't know what you're going to pay until you know what league you're in. therefore for planning and all the rest of the clubs need it. And we're still talking about October before behind the closed doors starts. Now, here's the thing, the Premier League's gone back to training this week, and that means that a return to some kind of normality in football, they're trying to get it the 1st of August. If the Premier League can start, then why can't the lower leagues? Of all the teams in Scotland, the lower leagues are the ones who need the games more. But then again, I suppose they're not going to be the product that is going to be on the television. Although again, in terms of the Championship, there was discussion and talking about a week or so ago about Sky putting into every Championship ground a set of cameras, which is fantastic. Then there's this guy, this entrepreneur, who's putting £3 million up for Scottish football, just as not an investment, just as a contribution in order to ensure that clubs survive, which is just unbelievably outstanding. It's not quite a drop in the ocean, it's a significant amount of money, and the man can certainly afford it, but we still need to see games on as soon as is practically possible. And if social distancing measures are being eased, and there's an opportunity to get some of these lower league clubs back training, I think that we should look at trying it as soon as possible. Playing behind closed doors is something that boxing has been doing this week. We've seen a couple of Bob Arum cards over in Vegas at the MGM Grand. Figures have come in and they're disappointing. We're talking about 1/3 million people watching and paying for it, or below that, which has not been good. The idea of people flocking back to sport, and Bob Arum has been absolutely spot on. He's 88 going on 15. I mean, he just is as sharp as a tack, and all that experience, you have to listen to him. He said, we'll struggle to get crowds back, we'll struggle to get people back interested in it. Now they put Shakur Stevenson on this week, they've got Jose Pedraza next week. It's super lightweight. It's just a real struggle, but Top Rank are doing something. It's every Tuesday and Thursday in the MGM Grand. This seems to be a pattern that they're going to follow, and all power to the elbow. I hope that what it leads to is an opportunity for people to reevaluate matchmaking, reevaluate who fights who, cut some of the politics. If there are sanctioning bodies that are going to die because they're not getting sanctioning fees, then it might be an opportunity to streamline, which wouldn't be a bad thing. For Ringside Report this week, I did a piece on Harold Weston Jr., a guy who had to retire after his final fight against Thomas Hitman Hearns because he ended up with a detached retina, 90% detached, which just can't do eyes. Really does grind my gears. It's an incredible little story. He did fight twice for a world title, never won them, but a guy who a lack of luck followed him throughout his career. Now, what I also did this week, which was Marco Antonio Barrera's fight against Prince Nassim Hamed, and it was not very good for Hamed, but what Barrera was, an absolutely incredible fighter, and fought exactly the right fight to dismantle Hamed. To have Manny Stewart in the corner. Now, it was a really bad time for Manny Stewart because here he was in the corner with the Prince, losing the Prince's title, the Prince not listening to him. You could hear there's an interview, I think, between rounds 10 and 11 where the interviewer catches up with Stewart and says, look, does your guy need a knockout? Yeah, he needs a knockout. I've told him that. It was the same year at the same time that Lennox Lewis was appearing in Ocean's 11 before his fight against Hasim Rahman down in South Africa, where he was knocked cold and lost his world title. In the corner, Manny Stewart. Stewart is an incredible trainer, was an incredible trainer, an absolute outstanding trainer, a man of such skill. But people have bad days, bad weeks, bad months, bad years. It doesn't make them bad people, doesn't make them bad at their craft. But what a year that must have been. And I watched it, and Naz was well beaten. Was it a completely disastrous performance? I didn't think so. I just didn't think he got the shots off. And so little work, so lazy. However, it's all gone now. He's grown up. And I ended this week by looking at a few little performances online, and there's a couple of things I'm going to round off with, which take me back to where I started. So, a series of metaphors about a plague. A theatre company who won a Fringe First in 2017, not a Fringe Worst, there's none of them. And this was a series of metaphors about a plague, which was done as a theatre company on Zoom getting together to talk about Antonin Artaud and the Theatre of Cruelty. It's very interesting. I think the beginning was a bit too long, but it was only 12 minutes in total, so maybe it wasn't anywhere near too long. Maybe the distortion that came after was an interesting piece. And it's interesting because a lot of people are putting up the best stuff on the internet, and a few are taking risks, and this was taking risks, and I like that. Going the opposite way, truncating some of the work, is Akela, the poet, rap artist and social commentator, who has had sections of The Ruins of Empire put on BBC iPlayer. I would urge anybody to watch it, everybody to watch it. I think it's just incredible. It is the words, it is the global reach of this piece of work, and I just found it, I watched it twice, and I don't normally watch things more than once, because I really found it not only challenging but spot on, as I find him really spot on over issues of race, and I've quoted him many times, and I bought his book, which is in there ready to be read when I get an opportunity to so do. But The Ruins of Empires, and what's clever about it, and what I think is really important about it, is he doesn't talk exclusively about the British Empire. He goes and he surveys all empires. So, having started with Black Lives Matter, I end with a black and minority ethnic poet, artist, who has something to say on the ruins of the past. And as we look at the ruins of our past, being the edifices which have been erected in order to commemorate the fact that these people were not only philanthropists, but racists, and they also managed to get their wealth on the backs of slavery, and in Glasgow on the backs of tobacco as well. It is an interesting week that has come to an end in a lockdown. What will next week bring? Who's to know? I certainly know in terms of boxing, there's a couple more fights, cards that are on the way at the MGM in Las Vegas. Plenty more to watch online. Plenty more exercise to get in order to address health and other related issues. But until I can tell you all about that, it's bye for now.